Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Mystic in Training podcast with me, your host, Melissa Amos. We, at the time of recording, are coming towards the end of the year, and I have been spending some time reflecting on all of the things that have happened this year. And I can tell you that all of the things that have happened this year has been a lot. If you wrote down every podcast that you listened to, every course that you started, every book you picked up, every seminar that you attended, every program that you began, every concert you went to, every conversation that you had, the amount of messages in your WhatsApps and your Messenger apps and your phone apps, whatever else you use, you might begin to understand why things can feel a little bit overwhelming, scattered, tired. And certainly for me, as somebody who speaks a lot about managing energy and making conscious choices, I've begun to realize something, that so many of us get caught in this loop of, I need to know more. We are in really an age of information. We can have information everywhere in any moment, even when we're sitting on the toilet, which, let's be honest, it used to be the thinking factory. I remember when I was back in my corporate days, it would often be when we'd come back from the loo, we'd be like, I was in the thinking factory and I had this amazing idea. But we don't have that space and that time anymore, not naturally, not unless we cultivate it. And especially if you're like me and you just have this yearning for more, you want to know more. I have always got my head in a podcast or a book or a course or a seminar. But I've started to think about actually what's really going on there, especially as I've been diving very deep into the Akashic Records. And it seems to me that when we take on this too much, when we are drawn to all of the teachers, to all of the activations, to all of the courses, to all of the everything, and we're probably doing this to in some way better ourselves, that it might be in some ways causing more damage than good. That yes, you're immersing yourself in really great information, that yes, you are doing this to better yourself, that yes, you are listening to the high vibe stuff. And for every one that you start and don't finish, for every conversation that you just leave hanging, for every book half read, for every podcast episode half listened to, from an Akashic Records point of view, it's almost as if we have left all of the tabs running. It's almost as if every single time we start something, we bring all this energy in with these great intentions, like this time is going to be, this time I'm going to do it. That we're opening a tab, we've got the video running on there, we've got the sound on, and then we move on to the next thing. And actually, I'm afraid to say that even if we finish it, but we don't embody it, there's a similar thing happening. I come back to a few episodes ago about when we know better, but we don't do better. Like, this is the trap that so many of us can very easily fall into. And it often happens when we've got too much. When we have, this year, everything's going to be different. This year, I'm going to be blah, blah, blah. I'm going to be amazing. And we've never had closure. We've never had the embodiment. We've actually never taken on the wisdom and the knowledge that we've received and made it our own. And this, I believe, is where the issues come in. Because what begins to happen is I now have my 25 tabs open. Some of them are competing with each other. And from an Akashic Records point of view, none of them are seen as the anchor. None of them are like, oh, this is the guidebook that we are going through this week. It's just like, well, it could be this, it could be this, it could be this. And then we spend all of this time in our heads, which, as we all know, is not always the best place. We spend all this time in our heads telling us, oh, well, this is what I should be doing. And this is what they said. And well, they said that, well, I need to behave in this way. And that they said, well, this is the thing that you need to do. And this is the practice you need to do. And then it's like, well, what did I read just then? I'm sure I read something that felt life-changing in the moment. And now it's kind of gone. And it's because it's competing with so much. It's because it's competing with so many other half-finished ideas. And I believe the missing ingredient to be this one very simple little thing, very simple word: coherence. So what is coherence? Coherence is, according to the dictionary, when there is a unified whole, when there are different parts or elements that are working together harmoniously, and it makes sense as a complete unit. Now, you can probably see from where I have, from where I've been explaining, that maybe part of this seeking, this eternal seeking of eternal knowledge, is causing this incoherence. And from a spiritual and psycho-spiritual and energetic point of view, I'm talking specifically between that coherence between the different parts of ourselves. We can begin with the mind, we can begin with the body, and we can begin with the soul. We can start to think about our emotions. We can also think about intentions, like what is it that I have actually intended to do today, this week, this month, this year? And where are these things in unity? You know, the human condition is really interesting, because we can pick up inconsistencies and we can pick up when somebody is incongruent with what they're saying. You know, we've all been there when someone has been like, oh, you look amazing, and you think she did not mean that at all. Or somebody says something and you feel like they mean the opposite, and it actually brings on this element of distrust. Like straight away, our spidey senses start to tingle and we're like, this person can't be trusted. And I'm afraid to say that this can happen to self as well. That when we're trying to go in one direction and when we're also trying to go in another direction, and there's nothing embodied, or and that's not even true. The thing that is embodied is the patterns from the past, which are often incongruent with the thing that you've just learned, because that's why you went to learn it, because you're, you know, suffering, or you're in pain, or you're feeling hopeless, or you're, you know, needing the oomph, or you're wanting some direction, or whatever it is, right? You've gone to explore, you've gone to find a solution to something that's going on inside. And so what happens is everything is, and you're wondering why. You've got this desire, perhaps, you know, there's something better. There's something within you that says, nope, this week, this month, this year, it's going to be different. Our job, it sounds so simple. Our job is to bring some coherence and consistency to that. Our job is to become super clear about, well, where is it that I'm going? What is it that I'm doing? Who is it that I'm becoming? What stories have I had enough of? And what's going on in my field? What have I picked up and never finished? So that they're no longer like these little threads that are pulling on our attention. They're no longer the tabs that are opening, playing all the loud music and the inconsistent sounds whilst we're trying to focus on something else. It actually becomes a priority to take what we already know and actually start to dismantle some of it. Actually begin to go, you know what? This was a conversation I started. Now I need to put this to bed, and to physically close it, to physically say no, or to re-pick it up and go, this is the one that I'm going to be focusing on. To start to get super clear about, well, what are my priorities? Does this even resonate with me? did I put this down because I didn't like what they said because it was going to be too hard, or it was incongruent with what I'm already embodied and what I already feel, even though I know I need to make a change? Or is it because no, that it's not? Do I have shiny object syndrome? So I'm always starting the new thing and I feel that sense of motivation and promise myself that this time it's going to be different. And then I go and let myself down by only being half in, and then blaming myself or blaming the other person. It gets interesting, right? When we really think about this from the view of our soul hologram or our soul's library, or just our energy body, that all this while that we have these different aspects pulling at us, it's as if we are creating like 12 different timelines and we're trying to live all of them at the same time. It's as if we are projecting that we're going to go and do one thing and then actually going and do the opposite, and then leaving our 23 different options open. And what begins to happen is each one creates almost like a life of its own. Each one uses some of your life force energy because it's part of you. It's part of the potential. It's part of the possibilities, which means that whatever it is that you decide to do, you're only at 10, 20, 50, 70% capacity. And you're never going to be able to give it all the while where everything else is still open. So it comes to this understanding of, well, how do I encourage this harmony? How do I encourage this unity? Why am I getting into these different courses and podcasts and books? What's my motivation behind it? And then what is one action? What is one actual action that I can take? This is how we begin to embody. Because I can have all of the knowledge in the world. And as we've just discovered, the more knowledge I have does not mean the more wisdom I have. The more knowledge I have on the 75 ways to ground my energy, and the 22 ways to become a better human being, and the 6 favorite things to regulate your nervous system, the more I have that just scattered around in my head, it is another tab open. Until I bring it into my body, I bring it into my subconscious, it forms part of my hologram, of my soul, of my guidance system. So it becomes automatic, so that it replaces, if you like, the coping strategies that I've already had and turn them into thriving strategies. All that while, they're just going to keep on pulling. And so the path to coherence is around embodiment. It's around clarity. It's around learning to say yes and to say no where it really matters. It's about not leaving things hanging and closing the tab and closing the conversation and not ghosting it, of making a decision and going, okay, this is the path that I'm going on and this is the path that I'm taking. And yes, you can change your mind. And yes, you're going to keep on growing. That's the point. That's the path. But having this unity within you can begin to create these consistent patterns. You know, I think back to how I've been treating my body. And this year I've had a real change. And I spent a long time researching a lot of stuff. I knew a lot about health and well-being and holistic health and intuitive eating and all of it, the hormones and all of these things. I'm a geek. I like to know all of these things. But then what was happening in reality is I was second guessing myself and I was questioning myself. And I was like, but then what about this? And then what about that? But this one says that fat is bad. And this one says that fat is good. And this one says I shouldn't eat carbs in the morning. And this one says that carbs should only be eaten in the morning. And this one says that I should be intermittent fasting. And this one says that intermittent fasting is raising my cortisol. And this one says that cortisol is going to help me put on weight. And this one says that woo, right? And so all of that is going on. Every single one of them, every time I opened the fridge, was playing on loud. Every single one of them was pulling a bit of my life force energy. And so to make an intuitive, healthy, aligned decision became almost impossible. It all really became clear when I was having a conversation with some friends about what's important. And for me, it wasn't about being skinny, and it wasn't really about losing weight. It was about being really healthy. It was about having consistent energy. It was about protecting my body. It was about feeling vibrant. And it was about being intuitive and being assured that what I'm doing is the right thing and enjoying that. Like, this is the life I'm living right now. Food is a joy. And the thought of going on some of these restrictive diets was like, my body was like, don't do it, don't do it, don't do it. Even if the media is telling me that this is the best thing to do. And so it began with a conversation which allowed me to get super clear on that. And then it began with understanding, well, which ones am I taking and which ones am I not? It folded into real identity work of who do I know myself to be? What stories have I got sitting which are incongruent with this? Stories like, well, you must always finish what's on your plate because there's starving children in Africa. Who's heard that one? Stories like, well, if you eat anything processed or powdered, then you're doing something really bad. Things like, well, protein is for weightlifters. Things like exercise is too hard work and is going to put too much stress on my body. Things like restriction is bad. Or the big one for me, like discipline. I was like, I don't want to be disciplined. Disciplined means being in trouble. And I changed that word of discipline to devotion. It's like, I'm devoted to my body. I'm devoted to my temple. And I began to rewrite those stories and then consciously put down all of the things that were sitting in detriment to that. And really bringing this unity, really bringing this coherence, really bringing this whole round thing, which has meant that over the last 9 months or so, I have reconfigured my body. And not only that, but I've just reconfigured the way that I choose to fuel myself, the way that I choose to move my body. And I have so much enjoyment in that. I don't ever think, oh, I'm restricting myself. And there's times where I allow myself to have the sugar or whatever it is, because it forms part of the whole. It's not, I'm no longer disciplined and punishing myself. But I have a devotion to my body. I have a devotion to my longevity. And that has impacted many other different ways I work, because we don't live life separately. How we do one thing is how we do everything. And so today, my invitation to you is, and by the way, if you've got to this point, you're almost at the end of the podcast. So well done. You've not left another thing hanging. But the conversation becomes of like, what is it that you're going to say yes and no to? What has been really important? Go back to the decision that you made that made you say yes to whatever it is, and just ask yourself if it's still there and if it's still valid. And then what needs to come in? Where have I been approaching this from a space of brokenness or from a space of I need to fix myself? What have I left because I really just don't want to do it and want to say no? So go say no. Stop leaving that tab open. And so this becomes our work, to bring our thoughts, our emotions, our actions, and our intentions so that they're all speaking the same language. Because when we do that, the tabs are all running together. We're listening to one tune, and it's a lovely, relaxing or invigorating one. And our nervous system can just go, oh, yeah, we're safe, we're here, we're whole. And how good would that feel? This is a really important conversation to have, so much so that in my soul space, this is what we're going to be focusing on for the remainder of the year. I have a beautiful free experience coming up, and I'd love for you to join us for the Coherence Codes, where we'll be gathering our energies, quieting the noise, and activating this coherence that's already within you. For more details, check the link below and in the show notes, and I look forward to seeing you there.